page. No, not today. I don't know, it's not on my sheet. It says we're starting with your reading. Says, yep, it says Rabbi's reading. Yeah.
All right, everybody, welcome. Bruchim Habaim, welcome back. Seems that you enjoyed it so much that you came back for more, which we thank you for. Whether you're joining us in person or online, we truly appreciate you being here. And in whatever shape, way, or form, do we have a service here for you today? So excited to be here. We've been planning this for a long time, and really amazing to be able to get to be here again with you and to really be able to celebrate the new year with you, to celebrate Rosh Hashanah, to celebrate the time in which we begin to remember who we are once again, to draw us back to the place in which we came. Ken, stop talking in the back. Thank you. The time in which we remember to draw us back to who we are. So many of us go farther and farther from that place during the year, chasing after the worldly pursuits that we have to go after making enough money, providing for our family, worrying about the daily needs. And we begin to forget about what truly we're remembered for, what truly is transcendent. And so therefore we are back for another day in which the sound of the shofar will ring out as an alarm bell to help us to wake up, to help us to remember. And I ask that it reverberate through our soul. That we truly today, Keni Ratzon, may it be God's will to fulfill God's call to truly listen to the shofar, for it to make us shudder, to make us tremble, and to make us wake up, to actually move forward, to actually progress. And in order to do that, we first have to speak about how good it is to be together. As we've known over this past 18 months how hard it has been to be together, correct? Still hearing from many of you the first time, still meeting you, some of you for the first time. This has been so hard to get out. And again, whether you're joining us in person or online, it is just wonderful and a blessing to be able to be together in person, and again, or to be together virtually, and that God has blessed us with the technology to have people be able to join us virtually, right? So we thank God for that. As we begin with the prayer that thanks God for joining us in community, if only Bilam on the top of the steps of Moab, when he said, Ma tovu alecha, how goodly are your tents, could have pictured Zoom minions, right? So we are on page 78, Ma tovu.
Ma tovu, ma tovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael, v'ani brov chastecha v'vetecha, Adonai Adonai. V'ani tefilati lecha Adonai et ratzon Elohim brov chastecha, aneni b'emet ishecha.
We now turn to page 84, thanking God for the daily blessings in our lives, for our body parts, for the things that God gives us. Page 84, we all rise. Birchot HaShachar, the morning blessings.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan letzach v'bina le'avchin ben yom u'ben laila.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani betzalmo.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shesani ben chorim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani Yisrael.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivrim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malbish haromim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kefufim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam roka haaretz al hamayim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasadikot zarki.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher echin mitzarei gaver.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam ozir sugra.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam otir Yisrael
Baruch
b'tifarah.
atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam anoten li'av koach.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamavir sheina me'na'ut muna me'af apai.
Page 86. You may be seated.
Utenenu hayom v'chol yom lechenu chesed urachamim beinecha u'bnei koroenu v'tigmalenu chasadim tovim Baruch atah Adonai gomel chasadim tovim le'amo Yisrael.
Amen.
Reborn kol amim. Ashrenu matov chelkenu manayim goralenu ma'yafai rushatenu Ashrenu shenachnu mashkim imarivim erev avoker Ve'omrim pamayim bechol yom Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Kadesh et shimcha makdishei shemecha vekadesh et shimcha b'olamecha uvishuatcha tarnu tagbi akarnenu baruch atah Adonai mekadesh et shimcha barabim.
We now turn to page 94, Psalm 27, the Psalm for the season of repentance, page 94.
LeDavid Adonai hori v'shi mimira Adonai me'oz chayim mi'evchad. Achat shalti me'et Adonai otavakesh. Achat shalti me'et Adonai otavakesh. Shivti b'veit Adonai kol yemei chayai. Lachazot b'noam b'noam Adonai ulevaker b'hechalot. Lachazot b'noam b'noam Adonai ulevaker b'hechalot. Lulei manti lirot betuv Adonai be'eretz chaim be'eretz chaim lulei manti lirot betuv Adonai be'eretz chaim be'eretz chaim Adonai. Kaveh el Adonai. Chazak ve'yametz libecha. V'kaveh el Adonai.
We now turn to page 96, the introductory psalm to Pesukei de Zimra, the introductory psalm to the verses of song where we sing and prepare ourselves for the main prayers to actually take on our relationship with God in the Shema and the Amidah. Here we prepare ourselves with song, page 96.
Mizmor Shir Chanukah Tabai LeDavid Aramim Charonai Kol Hafachta misvidi lemacholi pitachta sakivitas reni simcha leman yizamercha chevod velo yidom Adonai Elohai leolam odeka.
We all rise for Mourner's Kaddish on page 98. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabah.
Amen.
Bialma divrach chirutei, v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon u'byomechon u'b'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'bizman kariv v'yamru amen. Yehei shemei rabah vorach le'alam al me'omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnasei, v'yithadar v'yitalei v'yitalal, shemei d'kudashah b'reichu. Le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata, tushmechata v'nechamata, damiran be'alma v'yemru amen.
Amen.
Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael v'yemru amen.
Amen.
Osei shalom bimromav, hu ya'asei shalom aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael v'yemru amen. We remain standing on page 100 for Baruch Shamar, the introductory blessing for Pesukei de Zimra.
Baruch she'amar ve'aya olam, Baruch hu, Baruch oseh v'reishit, Baruch omer ve'yoseh, Baruch ozer u'mekayim, Baruch merachem al haaretz, Baruch merachem al habriot, Baruch meshalem sachar tov l're'ahav, Baruch Elad v'kayam lanetzach, Baruch bodeh u'matzil, Baruch Shemo, Baruch Yachid chel amimelech meshubachum faret shmo hagadol, Baruch atah Adonai, melech me'olam batishbachot.
You may be seated. We turn to Ashrei on page 108. 108.
Ashrei Yoshvei Veitecha Od Yalelucha Od Yalelucha Sela Ashrei Am Shekaka Lo Hashem Shemei Lati Laladav Yiranucha. Tehilat Adonai daber pi vayvarech kol basar shem kodsho le'olam va'ed ve'anachnu nevarech ya me'ata v'ad olam hallelujah hallelujah.
Page 112. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, El Bekodsho, Hallelujah, Birkia Uzot. Hallelujah, Vigvurotav. Hallelujah, Kirov, good Lord. Hallelujah, B'tei God Shofar. Hallelujah, B'nevel Vechinor. Hallelujah, B'tofu Machol. Hallelujah, B'minim V'ugav. Hallelujah, B'tziltzalei Shama. Hallelujah, B'tziltzalei Trua. Kol Anshama Te'aliyah. Hallelujah, Hallelujah. Kol Anshama Te'aliyah. Hallelujah, Hallelujah. Baruch Adonai Le'olam Amen Ve'amen. Baruch Adonai Mitzion Shechin Yerushalayim. Hallelujah. Baruch Adonai Elohim Elei Yisrael Steni V'lo Levado. Uvaruch Shem Kvodo Le'olam V'yimavlei Kivodo Et Kol Haaretz. Amen ve'amen.
We now turn to page 128. We all rise for the Song of the Sea, the song that the Jewish people sang as the Red Sea split open and the wondrous miracles happened before God. It is our job right now to see how in our life this past year we've seen how the Red Sea has split open in some way in our lives. What is one way that life has split open for you in some way that you've been able to walk through this Red Sea? Page 128. Trigger that joy. Az Yashir Moshe.
Az Yashir Moshe u'bnei Yisrael et Ashira hazot l'Adonai vayomru le'imor Ashira l'Adonai ki ga'oga sus v'rochbo rahama vayam ozi v'zimratya vayehi li lichua zeli ve'an ve'hu Elohei aviv rumenehu Adonai ish milchama Adonai shemo Markevot paro v'chelo yara vayam umivchar shelishav tubehu ve'am suf tehomor yechas yumu yardu mitzmilot kemo aven yemincha Adonai nidari bakoach yemincha Adonai tirat oyev. Mi chamocha belim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh, nohorati Lord hosefel. Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed. Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed. Ki l'Adonai amucha Moshe b'goyim ve'alu Moshe martun lishpot adare hesav hayetal Adonai amelucha ve'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz vayom ha'u Adonai echad.
We now turn to page 130 for Nishmat Kol Chai. You may be seated.
Nishmat Kol Chai Tivarech et Shimcha Adonai Eloheinu Nishmat Kol Chai Tivarech et Shimcha Adonai Eloheinu Yananai Nai 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 Yai 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 Nai 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 The Ruach Kobasar Mi melach umi shaveh lach umi aroch lach ha'el agadol hagibor v'narael yon koneh shemayim ve'aretz nehalelcha unshabechecha v'ercha v'rechet shim kodshecha ka'amor LeDavid baruch nafshi et Adonai v'chol kiravai et shem kodsho ha'el v'tatumotu zachar Hagadol b'chvod shemecha, Hagibor lanetzach, V'hanora b'norotecha.
So I'm going to do what our brothers in faith call a personal testimony here. Personal testimony. Can I give some personal testimony here? Can I have an amen maybe? Amen. Thank you. So you might have noticed during the Song of the Sea there, I asked you to figure out one thing in one way in your personal life that the sea has split. And I couldn't help myself, much to Rabbi Rachel's chagrin. I stepped off the rabbi's podium and went back to talk to Rabbi Rachel about one thing in our life that has really, the sea has split. And she immediately says to me, go back to the podium. You're supposed to be standing. And I said, I have to tell you this one thing. Don't you look at our life right now and say, man, the sea has split for us. It's unbelievable. You know, last October, we were in a town in upstate New York, and we had no idea where we were going. We knew we wanted to move because we wanted Hadassah to be in a Jewish preschool, and thank God the JCC here has been absolutely wonderful. This is not a paid sponsorship, Tracy, don't worry. But it's been wonderful. And but from October to April, you know, we really didn't know where we're going to go, where we're going to be. And eventually, we ended up meeting this unbelievable congregation where the relationships are so strong, the love is so strong, the clergy partners are so strong here. I remember on my first interview being badgered by this really intense person named Ken, you know, with tons of questions, and I knew that this is a special place. And this place didn't just take a gamble on me, they took a gamble on my whole family. And they hired the both of us, Rabbi Rachel and myself, and said this could be something dynamic. This is not something that we originally pictured, but this can be absolutely unbelievable, that we can grow, that we can grow together as partners. And I met some of the most unbelievable lay partners on our selection committee, leading the charge here. Of course, Roxanne leading the charge, but Lisa and Scott and the rest of the team as well, leading the charge as well, meeting some of the most amazing, amazing people. And then we did the craziest thing, because we loved you so much. We loved you so much. And by the way, we interviewed at like 20 different congregations, and we loved you the most. Okay? Don't tell anyone else that. We decided to move to a synagogue we had never seen before. Okay? We decided to buy a house we had never seen before. And you got a New Yorker to move over to a state he had never been before. New Yorkers only know of New York and Los Angeles. That's like our California and New York, and everything else in between is like kind of mush, you know? And now I've moved to this unbelievable place, and we've moved to this unbelievable neighborhood with the roaring Mississippi, and this unbelievable congregation that cares so much for their Judaism and cares so much for each other and is filled with so much love and care. And I've gotten to work with one of the best Bima partners, yes, Mark, as well as a lay partner, but of course, my partner, Cantor Josh here, an unbelievable partner behind the scenes, organizing all of these things together and putting this together with us, and just being able to work with us together, even though he's upset with me, I'm taking too much time. And also getting to work with Colleen, which has been unbelievable, and really my coach, which has been Ken, and coaching me and making me better and teaching me and educating me, and just I just wanted to, this is not written into the program, I just want to be sincere for a moment and give you testimony on why God is king in this world. Because we didn't know any of this before we came here. We had no idea. And this is I'm looking out right now at the red carpet, and it's really split for me, right? And it's really split for our family to be with you. And I hope you know that each and every one of you are a part of that for our family. And we thank you from the bottom of our heart for welcoming our family, for welcoming myself, Rabbi Rachel, Hadassah, my parents sitting in the back there. Thank you for welcoming this crazy New Yorker and this Midwesterner back to this beautiful, beautiful state we had never been to before, to our new home and the place we feel most comfortable. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. And may it be a testimony that God is King as we start our Rosh Hashanah service officially on page 134 with HaMelech, the King, who is certainly sitting and certainly residing with us today. Page 134.
HaMelech Yoshev al Kisei Ram Benisa Yainai Shochenar Maharom Vikadosh Shemo Shochenar Maharom Vikadosh Shemo Vichatu Veranenu Tzadikim Badonai Layesharim Nava Tehila Bifi Yesharim Titromam Uvedivrei Tzadikim Titbarach Uvilshon Chasidim Titkadosh Uvikerev Kedoshim Titala Umakalot Rivuvor Tamcha Beit Yisrael Brinai Paer Shimcha Malkinu B'chol Dor V'Dor Shechein Chol V'Kol Yitzurim Lefanacha Adonai Eloheinu V'Elohei Avoteinu Leodot Le'el Shabach Le'Fair Le'Romem Le'Ader Le'Varech Le'Aleu Le'Kales Al Kol Divrei Shiro V'Tish Bechot David Ben Ishai Abdecha Meshichecha.
We all rise. Yishtabach, page 134.
Yishtabach Shimcha Le'ahad Malkeinu Al HaMelech HaGadol VeHaKadosh V'Shamayim V'Haaretz Ki Lechana Barachot Ve'Hodaot Me'atav Yad Olam Baruch Atah Adonai El Melech Gadol V'Tishbachot El HaHodaot Adonai Niflahot Abocher B'Shirei Zimra Melech El Chei HaOlamim.
Amen. Chatzi Kaddish, page 136.
Yitkadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah Ve'amad Yivrach Yirutei V'yamlich Malchutei V'chayechon U'v'yomechon U'v'chayerecho Beit Yisrael V'agalal V'izman Kariv V'meru Amen Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mevorach Le'olam U'me'amaya Yitbarach v'yishabach V'yitpar v'yiterman v'naseh V'yithadar v'yitale v'yitalal Shemei Kedusha brichu Le'ela Le'ela Mikol berchata v'shirata Tushbechata v'nechemata, Tamiran be'ama ve'imeru, Amen.
Baruch Hu, page 138.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai Amvorach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Yotzer or v'rei choshech Oseh shalom v'rei hakol Or olam b'yatzar chaim Orot me'ofel Amar ve'yehi.
You may be seated, page 145, Hameir La'aretz.
Hamehir le'aretz, v'let arihim aleha, barachamim uvtuvo mechadesh, b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reishit, marabu ma'aseh Adonai.
Amelech Amram.
Titbarach Adonai Eloheinu, al shevach ma'aseh yadecha, ve'al me'orei ohor, she'asita, yifaruch ha'sela. Titbarach Tzurenu, Makinu v'go aleinu.
Page 146. Titbarach Tzorenu Malkeinu v'go aleinu. Yotzer Meshartim Asher.
Kulam ahovim, kulam berurim, kulam giborim, v'chulam osim b'ima v'aretzon konam, v'chulam porchim et pihem, b'kdush ta'ir. V'nizkechu lanu meira le'oro, Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzer ha'meheo.
This is the time when you might want to bring the four corners of your tzitzit together, representing and symbolizing the future coming together of the Jewish people as one in Eretz Israel on the land of Israel.
Ve'havienu le'shalom yerbakan fort haaretz v'tolichenu k'mil eretzeinu ki el poel yeshotata uvanu v'acharta mikolam v'lashon ve'kerev tanu l'shimcha gadol selah b'emet le'odor lecha yerchecha be'ava Baruch atah Adonai Abocher be'amo Yisrael be'ahava.
154, the Shema.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Ve'ahaveta et Adonai Elohecha V'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol me'odecha Ve'ayu advarim ha'eleh Asher anochi mitzavecha hayom alevavecha V'shinatam levanecha v'divartabam V'shiftecha b'veitecha u'v'lechtecha v'derech U'v'shokbecha u'v'kumecha U'kshartam le'ora yadecha V'yayu l'totafot b'neinecha U'chtavtam amazu beitecha u'v'isharecha
Hayam Shabbat Yishmael Mitzvah Shernachon Tzedekam. Lavat Adonai Lachem L'Ruchal Lechem L'Shem L'Tem.
Adonai Elohechem
Middle of page 158. Emet v'Yitzid. Nachon.
Lidor vador hu kayam ushmo kayam echiso nachon machuto v'emunato le'ad kayamet Rab kayim v'kayamim Emet shatahu Adonai Eloheinu v'Eloi avotenu makenu melech avotenu Go'aleinu go'el avotenu yotzreinu tzur yeshuatenu Potenu matzilenu me'olam shemecha Ein Elohim zulatecha Ezrat Avotenu Atahu Me'olam. Dor Vador.
Page 160.
Hillel Elyon, Baruch Hu Mevorach, Moshe u'Bnei Yisrael, Lechanu Shira, V'simcha Rabba, V'amru Chulam.
162. Micha Mocha.
Micha Mocha, Bailim Adonai, Micha Mocha, Nedar Bakodesh Nora, Tehillah Tosefele, Shira Chadasha, Shibechu Geulim, Leshimcha al Sifat Hayam, Yachad Kulam, Hodu Vehim Lichu, Ve'amru, Adonai, Yimlo, Leolam Va'ed, Yainai, Tzur Yisrael, Kuma Be'ezrat Yisrael, Uftekinu Mecha, Yehuda Be'Yisrael, Ego Aleinu, Adonai Tzivaot, Shemo Kedosh Yisrael, Baruch Atah Adonai Gal Yisrael Yainai Yanai Nai 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 Yainai Nai Nai.
We all rise on page 164 for the Amidah, for the morning Rosh Hashanah Amidah, the morning prayer. We're going to be saying the first three blessings today together with our wonderful Sheikh Sibor Mark, and then we're going to continue on silently, starting on page 174. We start together on page 164.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avoteinu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka, Ve'Elohei Rachel, Ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol, HaGibor, Ve'Anora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Ve'konei hakol ve'zocher chazdei avot u'mevi goel livnei v'neihem leman shemo be'avam misor hachamim u'nevonim u'milemed dan mevinim eftechafim B'tfilah u'b'tachanunim lechalot u'lechanen Hinei melech malachei hamelachim v'Adonai Haronim.
166 Zochreinu.
Zochreinu lechaim, melech hafetz b'chaim, v'chotvenu b'sefer ha'chaim, lemancha Elohim chaim. Melech ozer ufokeru Moshe u'magen, Baruch atah Adonai. Magen Abraham ufoked Sarah. Atah gibor leolam Adonai, mechaye metim atah urav le'oshia. Mechakel chaim b'chesed, mechaye metim b'rachamim rabim, somech noflim v'rofech cholim, u'matir asurim, u'mekayem emunatom lishenei afar. Michamocha b'gevurot u'mito melech. Melech mehimitu mechaye u'matzmiach Yeshua. Michamocha ahav harachamim, zocher yitzurav lechaim berachamim, v'nemarat halchayon metim. Baruch atah Adonai, mechaye hametim.
Amen. We turn to page 172, the Kedusha.
Uvechein lecha talei kedusha ki Nekadesh shimcha ba'olam, ki shem shemakdishim oto b'shmei marom, kakatuv al yad neviyecha v'kara zel zeveyamar.
Kadosh, Kadosh, Adonai Tzvaot, Melech kol haaretz kevod.
Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzevaot, Melech kol haaretz kevodo. Az b'kol rash gadol, adir v'chazak mashmim kol, minasim liumat serafim, liumatam baruch yomeru.
Baruch kevod Adonai, mimikomo.
Baruch kevod Adonai, mimkomo. Mimkomcha makenu, makenu tofia, v'timloch aleinu, ki mechakim anachnu lach. Matai, matai timloch, timloch b'tzion. Matai, matai timloch, timloch b'tzion. Bekarov be'amenu le'olam va'ed tishkon.
Bekarov yameinu leolam va'ed tishkon.
Tit gadal v'tit kadash, tit gadal v'tit kadash, b'toch Yerushalayim, irecha ledor vador, ulenetzach netzachim.
Ledor vador, לנצח נצחים.
ועינינו תראינה מלכותך כדבר האמור בשירי עוזך.
עלי לדוד, משיח צדקך.
עלי דוד, משיח צדקך. ימלוך אדוני לעולם אלוהיך ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים, ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נקדיש, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים, ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נקדיש, בשבחך אלוהינו, מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד, כי אל מלך גדול, כי אל מלך גדול, וקדוש אתה, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים, ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נקדיש.
you're still praying, please feel free to continue. We're going to continue on with the Sefer Chaim. It's written in the Book of Life of Blessing, page 180. You may be seated.
Sefer Chaim Baracha V'Shalom U'Parnasa Tova Nizacher V'Nikatev Lefanecha Anachnu V'Chol Amecha Beit Yisrael L'chaim tovim, l'chaim tovim, u'shalom. Baruch atah Adonai, Osea shalom.
Amen. May it be your will, Lord our God, to cause love and harmony, peace and comradeship to abide among us. Imbue us with reverence for you. Strengthen our good impulse. Thus may we serve you and perform your mitzvot, your commandments, wholeheartedly. May no one hate us or envy us, and may no hatred or envy of others be found in us. Keep us far from that which you despise. Draw us near to that which you love, and deal mercifully with us for the sake of your great name. We turn and all rise to Avinu Malkeinu on page 184 as the ark is opened.
Avinu Malkeinu chatanu lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu en lanu melech elata. Avinu Malkeinu achazirenu b'tshuva shlema lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu chadesh aleinu shana tova. Avinu Malkeinu kodvenu b'sefer chaim tovim.
Avinu Malkeinu kodvenu b'sefer chaim.
Avinu Malkeinu kodvenu b'sefer gula v'yeshua.
Avinu Malkeinu kodvenu b'sefer gula v'yeshua.
Avinu Malkeinu kodvenu b'sefer parnasa v'chakala.
Avinu Malkeinu kodvenu b'sefer
Avinu Malkeinu kodvenu b'sefer zichuyot. Avinu Malkeinu kodvenu b'sefer slicha umchila.
Avinu Malkeinu kodvenu b'sefer.
Avinu Malkeinu chamal aleinu v'yalol aleinu v'tapeinu. Avinu Malkeinu asel leman ve'veshuv mayim al kiddush shemecha. Avinu Malkeinu asel lemancha im lo lemanenu. Avinu Malkeinu chanenu v'aneinu. Avinu Malkeinu chanenu v'aneinu ki en banu masim. Aseh imanu tzedaka v'chesed. Aseh imanu tzedaka v'chesed ve'hoshienu. Aseh imanu tzedaka v'chesed. Aseh imanu tzedaka v'chesed ve'hoshienu.
We turn to Kaddish Shalem, page 186. You may be seated.
Yitkara v'grashem merabah, be'alamad yivrachir tivim lich malchut tevechai chor v'mechon v'kedechol b'Yisrael, bagalav izman kari v'meru, amen. Yesh merabah. Vishabach, Vipar, Vitraman, Vinase, Vitadar, Vitala, Vitalashmid, Kudesha, Barichu, Leila, Mikul Berkata, Vishirata, Tushkata, Venachamata, Damiran, Beama, Vimeru, Amen. Tika Ba, Son of Israel, Kodama, Vonishmaya, Vimeru, Amen. Yehi Shamar Shme V'chaim Alinu V'Ko Yisrael V'imeru Amen. O Se Shalom Bimromav Hu Yaseh Shalom Alinu V'Ko Yisrael V'imeru Amen.
Yasher Koach, Mark, thank you. Mark, I was going to say is doing double duty today, but I think you're doing like triple or quadruple duty today. Mark led us so beautifully in Psuke de Zimra and Shacharit. He's also worked so hard behind the scenes to coordinate all of our Torah readers, and he will, of course, stay on our Bima to Gabbai, and we just are so fortunate to have you in our community and to have you as a partner. So thank you, Mark and Yasher Koach. It's also 10 a.m., so while your children every child is invited to stay in here and daven with us, you're also invited for the youngest ones to babysitting downstairs, and for those in first grade and up to youth programming outside. We will turn to our Torah service now, page 192. We all rise.
הנה כמוך ברים אדוני ואין כמעשיך מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים וממשלתך בכל דור ודור אדוני מלך אדוני מלך אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד אדוני Adonai Yivarech et Amo V'Shalom Al HaRachamim Eitiva V'Etzonicha Letzion Tivnei Chomot Yerushalayim Ki V'Chal Levad V'Taku ויהי ברצון ויאמר משה קומה אדוני ויפוסו אויביך ויחלוסו משנאיך מפניך כי מציון תצא תורה כי מציון תצא תורה שנתן תורה ברוך שנתן תורה לעמו ישראל בקדושתו אדוני אדוני אל רחמנו רצון מפי וגול מלפניך, אדוני צורי וגואלי. לך אדוני את רצון, אלוהים ברוח חסדך, ענני באמת אישך. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh v'nora Shemo.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh v'nora Shemo.
Alu lananayiti, onromema Shemo yachdav. Decha Adonai hagedula, ve'hagevula, ve'hatiferet, ve'hanetzach, ve'hahod. Kichol v'shamayim u'ba'aretz, kichol v'shamayim u'ba'aretz. Adonai hamamlacha, v'yamim na'aseh lechol elom.
You may be seated. It's truly such a pleasure. It's our honor to be celebrating our Rosh Hashanah with each and every one of you here in our building. And those of you at home, welcome. We're so glad you're here. Our Torah reading today can be found on page 220. Our Torah reading is one that's difficult for, I would imagine, all of us. It's the binding of Isaac, the sacrifice of Isaac. And it's a challenging Torah reading, and we read it and we ask ourselves, how can this be in our holy Torah? How can we have this story of a parent willing to sacrifice their child? And I'll say I don't have answers. I think it is a challenging Torah reading, but I think our rabbis are hinting at something with their choice of Haftorah. Our Haftorah comes from Jeremiah. It's on page 229, and there are pretty explicit parallels between our Haftorah and our Torah reading. Our Haftorah says, "For I am ever a parent to Israel, and Ephraim is my firstborn." There's a pretty clear message here that when we're reading the story of the Akedah, the story of the binding of Isaac, our rabbis are inviting us to see ourselves as Isaac and God as our parent. And I think all of us have had moments where it feels like God has abandoned us, where it feels like God is leaving us to be sacrificed on the altar. And we ask ourselves, God, where are you? If you're my parent, as our liturgy says again and again, where are you? But of course, Abraham doesn't sacrifice Isaac. Isaac is spared, and our Haftorah promises us that God too will be there for us, even from those very dark places where it feels like God has left us, where it feels like we are left on the altar to be sacrificed. Our Haftorah promises us that with enough faith, with enough time, we will find that God has not abandoned us and that God will be there to save us in the end. So I invite you to our read along with our Torah reading on page 220.
V'yazor v'yagen v'yoshir l'chol chachosim bo v'nomar amen. Hakol avu godel Eloheinu unu kavod l'Torah yamor rishon Baruch shenatan Torah lemo Yisrael b'kedushato v'yetem marvikim b'Adonai Elohechem chayim kulchem hayom.
Baruch et Adonai Hamvorach. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Vaed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bahar banu mikol hamim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayehi achar hadevarim ha'elev ha'Elohim nisa et Abraham vayomer elav Abraham vayomer hineni vayomer kachna et bincha et yechirecha asher ahavta et Yitzchak velech lecha el eretz Hamoria v'ha'alehu sham leola al echad heharim asher omar elecha vayashkem Avraham baboker vayachavosh et chamoro vayikach et shnei narav ito ve'et Yitzchak beno vayavaka atzei olah vayakom vayelech el hamakom asher amar lo ha-Elohim.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'ayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
We're on our second Aliyah, page 220.
Baruch et Adonai Hamvarah.
Baruch Adonai Yambarach Le'olam Vaed.
Baruch atah Adonai Hamvarach Le'olam Vaed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bahar banu mikol ha'amim ve'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Bayom hashlishi vayisa Avraham et einav vayar et hamakom merachok vayomer Avraham el na'arav shavu lachem po im hachamur ve'ani ve'hana'ar ne'elcha ad ko v'nishtachave v'nashuva alechem vayikach Avraham et eratzei haolah vayasehim al Yitzchak beno vayikach beyado et ha'esh v'ramachelet vayelchu shnechem yachdav vayomer Yitzchak el Avraham aviv vayomer aviv vayomer hineni v'ni vayomer Hine ha'esh v'ha'etzim vayahaseh le'olah Vayomer Abraham Elohim Yirelo Haseh Leolah V'ni וילכו שניכם יחדיו.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu torat emet v'chaye olam notah b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. We're on the third Aliyah, page 222.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Amborach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayavo el hamakom asher amar lo Elohim. Vayiven sham Avraham et hamizbeach. Vayaroch et ha'etzim. Ve'akod et Yitzchak beno. Vayasem oto el hamizbeach mimal ha'etzim. Vayishlach Avraham et yado, vayikach et ha'ma'achelet lishchot et beno. Vayikra alav malach Adonai min hashamayim. Vayomer Avraham, Vayomer Avraham, Vayomer hineni. Vayomer al tishlach yadcha el hana'ar, val ta'as lo me'uma, ki ata yadati. Ki ra Elohim ata v'lo chashachta, epicha et yichidcha mimeni. Vayas Avraham et enav, Vayar v'hine ayil achar, ne'echzav besavach bekarnav. Vayeled Avraham vayikach et ha'ayil, vaya'alehu olah tachat beni. Vayikra Avraham, Shem hamakom hahu Adonai yireh, Asher ye'amer hayom, Bahar Adonai yireh.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chaye olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. We're going to pause and do a Misha Berach for the Holy, a prayer for those who are ill in need of healing of body, spirit, and soul. If you have someone you're thinking of, I invite you to whisper their names privately when I pause, those of you at home and those of you here. Misha Berach Avotenu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov, Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah, Hu Yivarach v'Yirapeh. Rivka bat Sarimenu, Shmuel ben Hirsch, Salman Lo, Sarivka bat Sisi Bechava, Moshe ben Reina Leah, Victor Pesser, Shahan Kotni, Roni Batina, Leah Etta Bafela, Shirley Rosenbroom, Sharon Deffrin, Jordan Meskin, Elisa Savia Bakolda, Hazel Chase, Maureen Gitlin. V'et kol acholim b'kila kedusha hazot, baruch li yimale rachlim alehem lahafsikam urapotam, v'yishlach lehem mehera refuah shlema min hashamayim, refuat hanefesh refuat haguf, b'tosha archole Yisrael, yom tov hu milizok refuah krova levo, hashda bagala bizman kari v'nomar. Amen. We pray for refuah shlema, for a complete healing to all those who are ill. We'll continue with our fourth aliyah in the middle of page 222.
Baruch Hu Adonai Hamborach. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Vaed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam. Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Amim. Venatan Lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
We are not reading silently. You got it? Yeah, that's right.
Amen. Vayikra Malach Adonai El Avraham Shenit Min Hashamayim Vayomer Binishpatinum Adonai Ki An Asher Asita Et Adavar Hazeh Velo Chazachta Et Benecha את יחידך כי ברך ברכך והרבה הרבה צריך כחובי השמיים וכחול אשר על שפת הים וירש זרעך את שער אויביו והתברכו בזרעך כל גויי הארץ עקב אשר שמעתי בקולי וישב אברהם אל נעריו ויקומו וילכו יחדיו אל באר שבע וישב אברהם בבאר שבע.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Natan Lanu Torat Emet V'chayei Olam Nata Betochenu Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Our fifth aliyah on the top of page 224.
Tamor Chamishit.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamavorach. Baruch Adonai Hamavorach Leolam Vaed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayi Acharei hadvarim haele ויוגד לאברהם לאמור, הנה ילדה מלכה גם היא, בנים לנחור אחיך, את עוז בכורו ואת עוז אחיו, ואת כמואל אבי ארם, ואת כסת וחזור, ואת פילדש, ואת ידלף, ואת בתואל. ובתואל ילד את רבקה, שמונה אלה ילדה מלכה, לנחור אחי אברהם, ופילגשו ושמה ראומה, ותלד גם היא את טבח ואת גחם, ואת תחס ואת מאחה.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Natan Lanu Torat Emet V'chayei Olam Nota Betochenu Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Please rise for the Chatzi Kaddish.
Yid kada v'yid kada shemei rabbi be'ahalem mari vrachi rutehe ve'yamelich malachutehe v'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayerecho beit Yisrael bagalav izman kariv imeru amen Yehi shmei rabba mevorach le'alam ulamei amaya Yitbarach v'yishtabach V'par v'troma v'naseh v'adar v'ale v'ala Shemei kudusha brichu le'ela mikol berchata v'shirata tush bechata v'nachemata tamiran be'ama v'imeru amen Yamor hamagbiya v'yamor hagolel V'zot HaTorah asher sam Moshe livnei Yisrael al pi Adonai ad Moshe.
You may be seated. Our Maftir Aliyah can be found on page 226.
Yamor, Yamor, Hamaftir.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Uvachodesh hashvi'i bechad lachodesh mikra kodesh yeh lachem kol melechet avodah lo ta'asu yom truah yeh lachem ve'asitem olah l'reach nichoah l'Adonai par b'makar echad ayil echad kevasim b'nei shana shivat tamimim umin chatam sol et v'lulav hashamen shlosha esronim lapar shnei esronim la'ayil ve'yisaron echad la'keves ha'echad l'shivat ha'kvasim utzeir izim echad chatat lechaper alechem milvad olad hachodesh uminchatam ve'olad hatamid uminchatam v'niskahem kemishpatam l'reach nichoach yishel Adonai.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Please rise for the lifting and tying of the second Sefer Torah.
Asher sam Moshe livnei b'nei Yisrael al pi Adonai v'yad Moshe. Ay nai nigi nai nai ay nai nigi nai ay nai nigi nai nai ay nai nigi nai ay nai nigi nai nai ay nai nigi nai ay nai nigi nai nai ay nai nigi nai Yai nai degi dai ananai nai yai nai degi nai yai nai nai degi nai ananai nai nai nai.
You may be seated. Our Haftarah today can be found on page 228.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nviim tovim v'ratza b'divreihem hanemarim be'emet Baruch atah Adonai abocher b'Torah uv'Moshe avdo v'Yisrael amo uv'inviei ha'emet v'tzedek. Ko amar Adonai matzah chen bamidbar am shiridei charev haloch lahargio Yisrael. Merachok Adonai nirali v'avat olam ahavtich al kain meshachti chased od evnech v'nivneit betulat Yisrael od tadi tupayich v'yatzat bimchol mesachakim O tidi chiramim behare shomron nadunotim v'chilelu ki yesh yom karu notrim behar Ephraim kumu v'nale Tzion el Adonai Eloheinu. Ki cho amar Adonai ranu le'Yaakov simcha v'tzahalu b'rosh hagoyim hashmiu hallelu v'imru hosha Adonai et amcha et sherit Yisrael hinanei meviotam me'eretz Zifon V'kipatztim mi'arketei aretz ba'miver ufiseach hara v'yoledet yachdav kahagadol yashuvu hena bivchi yavo uvtachanunim ovilem olichem el nachalei mayim B'derech yashar lo yikashlu ba ki hayiti leYisrael le'av ve'Ephraim bechorihu. Shimu devar Adonai goyim ve'hagidu va'iyim mimerchak v'imro mizareh Yisrael yekabtzenu ushmaro kiroe edro kifada Adonai et Yaakov ugalo miyad chazak mimenu uvau v'rinanu bimrom Tzion v'nacharu et tuv Adonai al Dagan ve'al Tirosh ve'al Yitzhar ve'al Bnei Tzon uvakar ve'haita nafsham kegan raveh ve'lo yosifu leda'ava od as tismach betula b'machol Uvachurim uzkenim yachdav v'hafachti evlam lisason v'nichamtim v'simachtim migonam v'riveti nefesh hakohanim dashen Ve'ami etuvi yisba'u neum Adonai. Ko amar Adonai, kol bara V'chi tamrurim Rachel miva ka'al baneh ha'me'ana Lehitnahem al baneha ki einenu Ko amar Adonai Mini kolech mi bechi V'enayich midim'ah Ki yesh sachar lifulatech num Adonai V'shavu me'eretz oyev V'yesh tikva le'achiritech num Adonai V'shavu vanim ligvulam Shamo Ashamati Ephraim mitnoded Yitzartani v'ivaser ke'egel lolumad Hashiveni v'yashuva ki ata Adonai Elohai Ki acharei shuvi nichamti v'hacharei havi yadti Safakti al yarech voshti v'gam niflamti ki nasati cherpat neurai haven yakir li Ephraim im yeled shashuim ki midei darbei bo Zachor is Karenu od al kain hamu me'ai lo rachem arachamenu num Adonai Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam tzur kol alamim tzadik b'chol hadorot ha'el ha'ne'eman ha'omer v'yoseh hamdaber umkayim shekol dvarav emet v'tzedek ne'eman atahu Adonai Eloheinu v'ne'emanim divarecha v'davar echad midvarecha achor lo yashuv reikam Ki el melech ne'eman v'rachaman ata, Baruch ata Adonai, Ha'el ha'ne'eman b'chol dvarav. Rachem al Tzion, ki hi beit chayenu, V'ela luvat nefesh toshia, b'imheira b'yameinu, Baruch ata Adonai, Misameh Tzion b'vaneha. Samcheinu Adonai Eloheinu v'Eliyahu hanavi avdecha uv'malchut Beit David meshichecha b'imheira yavo v'yagel libenu al kisolo yeshev zar v'lo yinchalu od achirim et kvodo ki v'shem kodshecha nishbata lo shelo nivra nero leolam va'ed Baruch atah Adonai Magan David, Al HaTorah, Ve'al HaVodah, Ve'al Hanvim, Ve'al Yom HaZikaron Hazeh, Shenatat Lanu Adonai Eloheinu, Lechavod Ultifaret, Al HaKol Adonai Eloheinu Anu Modim Lach, Umvorchim Otach, Yitbarach Shimcha, B'fi kol chai tamid leolam va'ed, udvarcha emet v'kayam lad, Baruch atah Adonai, Melech al kol haaretz, Mekadesh Yisrael v'yom hazikaron.
Amen. Yasher Koach, really beautiful reading. Yasher Koach to all of our Torah readers today and all of our Torah readers yesterday. It's such a blessing to be in this community with all of these incredible lay leaders who step up and bring words of Torah out to our community. So really, thank you all. It's been a true pleasure to be a part of. We'll turn now to our shofar service. I invite you to rise on page 243 for Min HaMeitzar.
Mina Meitza Karatia Anani Bamerchavya. Koli Shamata Talem Oznecha Levrachit Al Shavati. Rosh Tevrachemet Oleolam Kol Mishpat Tzidkecha. Arov Avdech Latov Al Yashkuni Zaydim. Sas Anochi Al Imratecha Kamotze Shel Rav. Tuftam Vedad Lamdeni Ki Mitzvotecha Hamanti. Nidvot Piretzeina Adonai Umishpatecha Lamdeni.
We turn to page 245 for an English reading to Kiyat Shofar. Give heed to the sound of the shofar, the sharp, piercing blasts of the shofar, rending the air with its message, its call for wholehearted repentance, summoning us to our Creator to render God true devotion. Renounce your sins and transgressions, false aims and unworthy striving. Fill your hearts with a new spirit of loving concern and forgiveness. Give heed to the sound of the shofar, the blast that is blown, O my people. Turn to page 249 for the shofar blast.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kedeshenu mitzvotav v'tzivanu lishmo kol shofar.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shechiyanu v'giyanu lazman hazeh.
Amen.
Tekiah. Shvarim Trua. Tekiah. Tekiah. Shvarim Trua. Tekiah. Tekiah. Shvarim Trua. Tekiah. Tekiah. Shvarim. Tekiah. Tekiah. Shvarim. Tekiah. Tekiah. Shvarim. Tekiah. Tekiah. Trua. Tekiah. Tekiah. Trua. Tekiah. Tekiah. Trua. Tekiah Gedola.
Asher yam yodea tzirua Adonai b'orpanechecha yehalechu.
Blessed are the people who hear in the shofar a summons to walk by the light of your presence. We turn to page 250. You may be seated. on the bottom of page 252. Please rise as we return the Sifrei Torah to the Ark. We will be doing a procession, and we do invite you to stay in your rows. We will come down every aisle, so please try and not congregate, and we'll be sure to reach you. Page 252.
Hallelujah, Shem Adonai, Ki nizkar Shemo levado, Hodo al Eretz Neshamayim, Vayalem keren le'amo, Tzilah lechol chasida, Livnei Yisrael am keromo. Hallelujah, hallelujah. LeDavid mizmor, LaDonai haaretz umloa, tever veyoshveva, ki hu al yamim yisada, ve'al nehar lo tiktoteneha, LaDonai haaretz umloa, tever veyoshveva, ki hu al yamim yisada, ve'al nehar lo tiktoteneha, mi ya'aleh behar Adonai, ומי יקום במקום קודשו. נקי כפיים ובלב, אשר נשא לשווא נפשי ולא נשבע למרמה, יישא ברכה מאת אדוני, וצדקה באלוהי אישו. נקי כפיים ובלב, אשר נשא לשווא נפשי ולא נשבע למרמה, יישא ברכה מאת אדוני, וצדקה באלוהי אישו. זה דור דור שמבקשי פניך יעקב סדה. שאו שערים
ראשיכם יינשאו פתחי עולם,
ויבוא מלך, ויבוא מלך הכבוד. מי זה מלך הכבוד? אדוני עזוז וגיבור, אדוני גיבור מלחמה. שאו שערים ראשיכם ושאו פתחי עולם, ויבוא מלך, ויבוא מלך הכבוד. מי הוא זה מלך הכבוד? אדוני צבאות ומלך הכבוד סלע. ומנוחו יומם. כי לך טוב נתתי להם, תורתי אל תעזבו, עץ חיים היא למחזיקים בה, ותומכיה מאושר דרכיה, דרכי נועם, וכל נתיבותיה שלום. השיבנו אדוני אל
Shana Tova, everybody. You may be seated. So raise your hand if at some point this year you were unsure of whether your kids or grandkids could safely go to school. Okay. Raise your hand if you have noticed that different schools are making radically different COVID-19 safety rules. Raise your hand if at some point this year you were unsure if it was safe to shop in the grocery store. Raise your hand if you've noticed that different stores have radically different COVID-19 safety policies. Raise your hand if at some point this year you were unsure if it was safe to visit a family member. Raise your hand if you heard one politician or doctor tell you that it was safe to visit and another one who told you it wasn't. Raise your hand if at some point this year you were unsure if it was safe to attend synagogue. Raise your hand if you know of synagogues that have radically different COVID-19 safety protocols. And lastly, raise your hand if you are not sure whether you felt safe to attend Rosh Hashanah services today. Doubt, uncertainty. I faced many of these doubts with you. Only last year, I was working as a congregational rabbi in New York when the pandemic began to get bad there. And I was literally doing funerals in person alone with the funeral director, with the rest of the family joining me on my Zoom through my phone stashed in my pocket. I was one of the few active congregational rabbis in the area, and I knew if I didn't help, these Jews would not be buried according to Jewish tradition. I remember the back-breaking labor of burying a holy Jewish soul alone out in the cold with a mask on. I remember working to narrate where there was not enough service in our country cemetery for video, just audio. Now we are placing your father into the earth. Now I'm putting the first shovelful of earth onto your mother. Please now give me 15 minutes as I bury by hand your sister, while gently trying to chant Psalm 23 without giving away how hard I was working or breathing. So many doubts raced through my head. Am I doing this right? How do I comfort this family right now? How do I facilitate a family to say goodbye to their loved one without being even able to be with them? When are we going to get out of this? Is this just my job now? Am I observing and honoring Jewish tradition correctly? How does one serve as a rabbi for the Jewish people when they can't even physically be in the same room as a fellow Jew? In the face of the many dark and unprecedented challenges we have faced this year, an ancient mitzvah from our tradition spoke to me in my time of need. It became my anchor, a symbol and signpost shining a path through the storm, fortifying me with strength and hope, the mitzvah of Techelet. The Techelet, which is a single, I gotta unfurl the seat here, a single blue string on my tallit, was a post-it note for me to search for blessing and God amongst the utter confusion and darkness of the moment. How did a single blue string do so much? How could mitzvot and Jewish philosophy drag us through this difficult time we are all facing together? I am going to lead you on an intellectual and spiritual journey today that musters together wisdom and advice from our 4,000-year-old tradition that will act as our tow rope through the storm. Over our journey, what may at first seem like ancient dusty history, obtuse Jewish laws, or kid stories will become integral keys to open long locked doors we have pounded against this year. Let's start with these. Look around. Look at the tallit you or someone near you is wearing. Does it have the blue string or are the tassels pure white? Take a second. Look at your own tallis. Look at somebody else's. Some people have it, some people don't. You probably see mostly white, correct? So why aren't all talitot made with the blue string? The exact color and source of the dye for the blue was only recently found by Israeli scientists, one of the great miracles of the modern Israeli state. Since now it has been found, we now have the ability to choose if we are going to adorn our talitot with that blue string. Since it is so new, though, each person must decide if they want to add this blue string to their talitot. Over the last year, I decided to add the blue string to my talis, and its power truly worked to help me find my way during our time of communal darkness. Now, why was deciding to wear and attach techelet, that blue string, to my talis and tzitzit so meaningful to me? What is the power behind the techelet, and what does it come to symbolize? In order to understand, we must face an essential component of creation: doubt. Doubt plagues us all and makes our lives more difficult. The plethora of doubt we constantly encounter in life makes being human quite challenging. Now, doubts could be anything. How long will I live? Will I remain healthy? Will I be successful? Is this the right person for me to marry? Should I enter this business deal? Which college should I attend? Some doubts are constant, and while others come intensely only at certain moments until they're resolved one way or another. Before COVID-19, doubts were less conspicuous, to say the least. One could pretty much take for granted that the football season would begin in the fall, baseball in the spring, our children would be able to safely attend school, Thanksgiving as a family in November, new TV shows in the fall, you name it. Everything that we took for granted was thrown out the windows with the COVID-19 pandemic. I remember when churches, mosques, and synagogues were closing, and we made the awful decision to cancel our popular communal Passover Seder. I thought the world was truly coming to an end. During this time, we each have been plainly shown that much of what we have taken for granted is truly in doubt. We are now constantly plagued with hard decisions like, is it safe to send our children to school? Can I safely see my family members? Is it safe to go to the grocery store? Can I safely pray in my spiritual sanctuary, Temple of Aaron? Harder questions that inhabit the back of our brains constantly, all of a sudden, were shoved into the forefront for many. Am I going to contract a deadly illness? Is this it? Is someone I love going to become very sick? Am I ever going to get my smell and taste back? Will I be able to get the medicine or supplies I need? Is my business going to fall apart? Are the vaccines enough? Raise your hand if any of these questions entered your mind this year. Let's talk about doubt. The doubt itself can much of the time be more oppressive than the danger itself. Yet we are surrounded by doubt. Did you know that we can't even translate the first word of the Torah, Bereshit, usually translated as in the beginning? Traditional and contemporary scholars struggle greatly with translating the first word of the Torah. Yes, it's usually translated as in the beginning, but scholars assert that this translation is actually grammatically impossible. The Torah, therefore, begins with a doubt. We can't even get to the first word of what is supposed to be the foundational text of Judaism and our lives without getting bogged down in doubt. Let's take a look at Rosh Hashanah, the holiday we are immersed in now. Even Rosh Hashanah, the holiday we apparently and proudly deem to have the utmost importance in our life, at least based on attendance, this doesn't look like a normal Shabbos, is woven through with profound doubt. Supposedly, Rosh Hashanah marks the birthday of the world. Or does it? According to the Talmud, two important sages disagree over whether Rosh Hashanah marks the day in which the world was created or the day in which humans were created, which would be the sixth day of creation. I'm not sure how it would go over if I told Rabbi Rachel here that I wasn't quite sure whether August 29th was the day we married, or perhaps it was the day we became engaged, or first date, or the day we met. Don't worry, I know it's our wedding anniversary. It's the password on my iPad, so it's okay. But seriously, how can the meaning of this day be shrouded in so much doubt and uncertainty? Now, Rosh Hashanah is also a 2-day holiday because it remained in doubt exactly when the new moon would be spotted, beginning the new month of Tishrei. Although Jews outside of Israel celebrate an extra day of all biblical holidays, for this reason, while Jews within Israel only celebrate one, there remains only one holiday which is celebrated for 2 years everywhere. Which holiday is it? Rosh Hashanah. The reason for the 2 days is because of the doubt of exactly when that first glimmer of the new moon may appear and begin the month. The time of the beginning of the year and the anniversary of the creation of the world, or the creation of man, take your pick, is truly in doubt. Doubt is a central component of human life, a necessary factor in manifesting God's dream for human beings. I'll say it again. Doubt is a central component of human life, a necessary factor in manifesting God's dream for human beings. Doubt and uncertainty is certainly not new. Rather, it is part and parcel of the human condition. You know, I remember very well when Hadassah, our 2-year-old, was born, the first thing she did after she took her first breath was cry. Usually that actually means I've been told that a baby is healthy. Now, why? Why did she cry? Because all of a sudden, each baby, Hadassah, also realizes that they're not attached to a food source anymore. They are in a completely new surrounding filled with weird creatures, lights, and sensations. The first thing they encounter is a wave, an ocean of uncertainty and doubt. From the cradle to the grave, doubt and uncertainty is endemic to the human condition. Human beings immediately find existence completely overwhelming, and without the warm embrace of Rabbi Rachel, her mom, who knows where we would be today. Now, one of the most defining events in human history is when Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, literally occurring on the first Rosh Hashanah ever, the 6th day of creation. The cataclysmic event of the eating of the fruit of the tree defines much of the struggle of being human in the first place. Now, has anyone ever heard of Rabbi Gershon Heinrich Leiner of Radzin? No. Well, let me tell you, he is one of the most innovative 20th century rabbis who brought new meaning to the mitzvah of the famous blue string that we've been talking about. He did so by offering a bold interpretation of the meaning of what happened that day. Now, the usual meaning of the tree of knowledge of good and evil is the ability to know what is good and what is bad, i.e., the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. If this was attainable, why would it be so bad to know decisively what is good and what is bad? Why shouldn't we eat from the fruit of the tree? Wouldn't God want this of us? Wouldn't God want us to do the good and know the good and know the bad? Probably easier to do the good then. The snake taunts Eve. Don't worry, you're not going to die. But God knows that as soon as you eat it, your eyes will be open and you will be like divine beings, knowing good and bad. The human being must always remain just that, human beings, although blessed with many great qualities, they remain limited. As our Rosh Hashanah Machzor states so clearly, our origin is dust and our end is dust. At the hazard of our life, we earn our bread. We are like a fragile vessel, like the grass that withers, the flower that fades, the shadow that passes, the cloud that vanishes, the wind that blows, the dust that floats, the dream that flies away. Limitation and fragility form a central part of what it means to live in this world which God desires us to live in. God does not face these issues in God's omnipotence, therefore creating an oftentimes painful difference between God's and our reality. Now, the illusion of being human is that one can acquire complete knowledge or transcendence. That full clarity is somehow some attainable goal that we can surely fully know if we only think hard enough, work hard enough, read enough, or pray hard enough. The illusion and lust for certainty, understood as humans' mistaken desire to be gods in our tradition, is symbolized by the lust for the fruit of tree of knowledge of good and evil. The snake tempts Eve by prodding her. You can be like God too if you want. You don't need to live in doubt. You can always know what the future holds, what truly the right decision is to make in every venture. The knowledge of good and evil is just one bite away. But guess what? The snake lies. We must not fall prey to the temptation that our futures are granted and we can somehow arrive at a place of total clarity in all things. The natural mindset of human beings is to believe that there is a basic order to the way things are supposed to go. New television shows starting in the fall, the baseball season in spring, having a certain number of children, marrying a certain kind of person, living a certain amount of years, having a certain kind of career, a certain kind of quality of life. We now understand that to take these things for granted is no more than a fool's errand. Part and parcel of being human is ignorance. It is impossible to know what will or will not happen, and therefore human beings should expect the unexpected. Yet we are always surprised and upset when we suffer, when something doesn't work out as expected. Expect the unexpected. Has anyone ever laid the perfect plans only for them to fall apart? I certainly did. Rabbi Rachel had a significant birthday recently, and I planned out a whole day of fun. She happens to love farmers markets, so I looked it up, and it was open on her birthday. I Googled it. So we excitedly ventured over to the Minneapolis Farmers Market. Huge. Rachel's parents were with us that day, and I was quite excited to show off what a beautiful day I had planned for her. We arrived at the location where the market was supposed to be, and there were only 2 stands there that day. I had trouble masking my frustration, to say the least. After recovering my composure, we piled back into the car to attend a vegan restaurant nearby that we hadn't tried yet. We pulled into the parking lot, paid for parking, only to find out that the restaurant still wasn't allowing indoor seating. Frustration abounded. I felt foolish and stolen from. After regaining my composure yet again, with some help from her parents this time, we headed to Breadsmith to grab some delicious baked goods to eat in our beautiful backyard. We then proceeded to have a delicious meal in our backyard with delicious breads and cheeses, enjoying our wonderful New York backyard in our new home. The moment I was able to release my sense of what I deserved, I began to appreciate the blessings of the moment. So if doubt and limited knowledge are a centerpiece of what it means to be human and always will, how do we deal with it? What's the path through? The secret is that the tree of knowledge of good and evil can actually become the tree of life if we can only change our perception. How do we change our perception? through sacred intentional action we call mitzvah. Judaism affirms that intentional concrete actions alters and forms the way we perceive and process the world around us. One ancient mitzvah that provides a model for the spiritual path through the psychological storm of doubt and uncertainty is the mitzvah of bikurim, or the offering of the first fruit. Now, I know you might think this is some ancient history, technicality, or at best, learning about it might help you take home the big prize money as a Jeopardy contestant. That is, if the subject happens to be ancient Jewish agricultural practices in the time of the First Temple. But I promise you, if you follow me, each aspect of this ancient practice can serve as a model for us of how Jewish action, mitzvah, can radically alter and improve our perspective and lives. Now here we go. Follow me here. It is a mitzvah for a farmer to keep watch in her field, watching all the time for the first fruit or produce to bloom. Now, once the farmer spots that first sprout, she must run over and tie a rubber band around the sprout, marking it as the first. Eventually, the piece of produce is to be brought down to Jerusalem, the most holy city in Judaism, and the home of the one holy ancient Jewish temple, to celebrate it in a beautiful, ornate, and joyous parade, appreciating God's gifts with the whole Jewish people. The great joy surrounding the activity stemmed from it being so uncertain whether there would be any produce at all. You see, Israel and its crops receive water by rain, for there is no overflowing Nile River or thousands and thousands of beautiful lakes. You know, if you asked an Israeli, they would probably think the number of lakes surrounding us in Minnesota is nothing less than a miracle. If most Minnesotans saw the one freshwater lake in Israel, the Galilee, they would most likely not even notice it. Israel and its residents were and are never sure they will have enough water for the crops to grow. But when they saw that first sprout blossom, the ancient Israelite had so much to be thankful for. The advice to us today from this mitzvah is to never delay one's gratitude for what we receive from God. When doubt is resolved through God's gifts, we must take some action to express gratitude, for that shapes the way we conceive of our environment. How often do you actually express gratitude with action for your children, your spouse, your home, your city, your synagogue, your neighbors, your television, your sidewalks, your car, your Zoom streaming technology? Do it more often. But wait. When one marks the first sprout as the first fruit, the produce is not even fully ripened yet. And the farmer is not yet guaranteed that the whole crop or even any of the crop will grow into fruition. Shouldn't they wait until they're ensured that the produce will fully grow? Are they not expressing gratitude prematurely? We often ask that same question in our own lives. Throughout the globe, for example, the buildup of greenhouse gases is having an extreme and dangerous impact on our climate. There is so much work to do to help slow down and eventually halt the dangerous changes to our climate that we are already seeing impact all of us with extreme weather. Taking gas vehicles off the road, changing the way we raise livestock, and replacing coal power plants with renewable sources of energy are just a few of the tremendous steps which need to be taken to halt the effect that greenhouse gases are having on our environment and lives. Marking the first fruit when it begins to sprout is like asking someone to express gratitude and joy anytime just one person chooses to put solar panels on their roof. What's the point of rejoicing? What's the point of gratitude? There's still so much more work that needs to be done. Yet, Jewish wisdom requires you to rejoice. Torah requires us to express gratitude, even amongst prolonged and continuing doubt. Expressing gratitude doesn't halt progress, but rather fuels it. There will always be doubt. There will always be uncertainty. What enables us to walk in that darkness is to search for the sparks of gratitude, even though they may be fleeting. Much of the time, we think that we can't both experience prolonged uncertainty and express gratitude. But that is actually how the Jews have thrived from time immemorial. As I spoke about earlier, turning the tree of knowledge of good and evil into the tree of life is not escaping and banishing doubt, but focusing on the blessing in the midst of the doubt. The essence of being human and the spiritual path of Judaism is choosing to celebrate life amongst the dark clouds of doubt and anxiety. Once we stop trying to rid ourselves all of doubt and anxiety, we start actually living life. I needed to be reminded of this essential concept during the dark year we faced. So much of the time, including right now, we existed and still exist in uncertainty, doubt. I needed to mark this new period of conspicuous uncertainty with a renewed mitzvah. Therefore, I needed something, and Techelet was my something. How was Techelet a signpost to search for God and blessing even amongst the darkness? It is taught in the Talmud, Rebbe Meir would say, what is different about Techelet, that blue string, from all other types of colors, such that it was chosen for the mitzvah of ritual fringes? It is because Techelet is similar in its color to the sea, and the sea is similar to the sky, and the sky is similar to the throne of glory. Looking at the blue fringes is supposed to remind us of the vast sea, which is then to remind us of the sky, and then finally to God's resting place. If the many white fringes are supposed to be reminders of all the many mitzvot and obligations we need to do, the interweaved blue fringe is supposed to remind us that within those obligations, within us trying to live our lives and deal with an abundance of doubts and uncertainties, we find blessing and God surrounding us. The blue is intermingled, not separate from the white. Just as God's presence, blessing, and gifts are to be found within the doubt, not in some utopian reality where it doesn't exist. Adding Techelet, that blue string, to my talis worked for me. But what worked for you? What are the mitzvot, sacred practices that have helped guide you through the doubt and uncertainty of this year? Have you begun to light Shabbat candles? Give more charity. Call your parents, siblings, children, or friends more often. Made a point to somehow rest on the Sabbath. Since doubt and uncertainty are a natural and permanent part of our existence, the holiday that begins our year, the holiday in which we accept God into our lives once again, Rosh Hashanah, is framed in doubt and hiddenness. Whether it be what the holiday actually is an anniversary of, or what day the holiday actually falls on, this holiday is certainly filled with doubts and questions. The task of Rosh Hashanah is called in Hebrew, Kabbalat Ol Malchut Shamayim, or the acceptance of the rule of God in our lives. Rosh Hashanah is the day in which we coronate the King for the community and in our personal lives for this year. The first verb, though, means accept. And what we first must accept is that our lives will always be filled with doubt and uncertainty. This year, we are all faced with more uncertainty and doubt than ever before. Although COVID-19 will eventually become less of a problem, B'ezrat Hashem, with God's help, making our anxiety and doubts less conspicuous, we now know that life cannot be taken for granted. Accepting God's sovereignty begins with understanding that to be human is to live in a condition of doubt and uncertainty. The path of Judaism, the path through doubt and uncertainty, guides us to see and sanctify the blessings amongst the confusion, not outside of it. Judaism is a religion of this world, not the next world. Judaism is our ancestral inheritance of spiritual technology, which guides us through finding joy, meaning, and God in a life that will most certainly be unpredictable, imperfect, and finite. Grab onto it. We each need this path more than ever. We don't just accept the doubt and uncertainty, but we also recognize and look for God's presence and gifts within that state. Rosh Hashanah symbolizes the finding of that blessing amongst the confusion, for Rosh Hashanah only begins when someone spots the first glimmer of the new moon. Not the full moon in all its splendor, but just a tiny little glimmer. The holiday doesn't begin until out of the darkness, someone who's living in that darkness can spot a small sliver of light. The testimony of those watchers is what commences our new year and begins the process of renewing ourselves and our relationship to God. I'm asking you today to be those watchers. So, a couple of points I want you to take home from today. Number one, doubt is normal. Number two, uncertainty will always exist in your life and our lives. Number three, expect the unexpected. Number four, life cannot be taken for granted. 5, Judaism helps us to find God in our lives, not some utopian version of it. 6, express and act on gifts with gratitude when they are received, not when they are brought into full fruition. Number 7, Torah, unfortunately, does not make us all knowing. Number 8, Torah does provide a roadmap to a life of meaning, joy, and gratitude. Shana Tova, everybody. May you each be written in the book of life for 5782.
That's the perfect lead into Hineni.
Unbelievable.
Continue our service with Hineni. I invite you to take this time to reflect on that sermon you just heard, to reflect on the small gifts of the beginning even of the gifts with gratitude. Reflect as the cantor davens his private Hineni prayer, begging God to be worthy of carrying the prayers of the congregation. I invite you to really sit and think, what are those prayers? What are you praying for today? What are you grateful for today? We turn to page 279 for Hineni.
Nirash v'nivchar mipachad Yosef tilot Yisrael Bati lamod ulitchanen Alamcha Yisrael Asher shirakuni Avrapi sheni chedai ve'agor mechach Lachen avakesh mimecha Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Adonai, Adonai, Erachum v'chadnun Elohei Yisrael, Shaddai hayom v'nora, אינה מצליח דרכי אשר אני הולך לעמוד ולבקש רחמים עליי ויחלשולך נעל את נפשי בחטאותיי ואל תדחי בהם בעוונותיי יחוטא ופושע ואל יקנמו בפשעי ואל יבושו הם בי ואל אבוש אני בהם קבל תפילתי כתפילת זקן ורגיל ופיר קודנאי זקנו מגודל וקולו נעים ומעורב בדעת עם הבריות והנה דלוגנו אליה דיאר כל פשעים תכסה באהבה כל צרות ורעות הפכנה לנו ולכל ישראל לששון ולשמחה לחיים ולשלום האמת והשלום מאהבו אלוהי שומיקשו בתהילתי יהי רצון מלפניך אדוני אלוהי אברהם יצחק האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא אל עליון. אהיה אשר אהיה, שתבוא תפילתי לפני כיסא כבודך. ועבור כל הצדיקים והחסידים, התמימים והישרים. ועבור כבוד שמך הגדול והנורא, כי אתה שומע תפילת עמך ישראל ברחמים. ברוך אתה
who would like to have a traditional Musaf service that will be taking place in the chapel, you can head out now. Everyone else, I invite you to turn to page 266 as we rise for a Chatzi Kaddish.
ויתקדש שמי רבה, אמן. ועולמד יברך חירותי, וימליך מלכותי. בחייכון לעילה, לעילה, מכל מלאכתה ושינתה, ושפחתה
ונחמתה.
האמירה, דאמירה, והימרו אמן, אמן.
You're invited now into a few moments of private prayer. You can follow along in the prayer book from page 268 to 278, or use this time to have a few private moments with God. you're still davening your private Amidah, please continue. We're turning now to our creative musical Musaf service. I hope you all each have one of your second day booklets with you. If not, they are on a cart in the center aisle. Please do grab one. Before we begin, I just have to thank our Danae Thorpe in our office, who just poured her heart and soul into this beautiful booklet and really made it what it is today. So when you speak with Danae, please do thank her for doing such a beautiful job on this book. Rosh Hashanah is a time of new beginnings, and that's our theme today. It's not just one new beginning, it's an infinite array of new beginnings, and that's the beauty of community. At each moment, there is new life, new moments of celebration, new transitions, and new goodbyes. We are about to embark on a journey together through song and the sharing of stories. And so I want to thank each of our community speakers who have so generously offered to share of themselves to elevate our high holidays today. If you are one of our speakers today, I do invite you to join me up here in one of the first rows to enable a smooth transition as we go through our service. To those of you who are watching from home, the second day booklet that we have here was emailed out on Friday if you have it in front of you. But if you don't, that's okay. I invite you to just allow the words of the songs and the words of the sharing of stories to help elevate you as you join in on our service today. We will begin our service with a nigun. You can open your books to page 2. As we go through our service today, I invite you, I know often in services, the rabbi tells you what page to turn to, and you all diligently, like good students, turn to that page, and normally is lovely. But during this service today, there's so much text in this book that we've provided for you to be a jumping off point for you, for your own reflection and your own journey. So I invite you, especially as we're singing together, to flip through from pages 1 through 9, read the different texts, look at the beautiful photos, and help immerse yourselves in this moment of new beginnings. It's my pleasure to invite up our first speaker, Dustin Nides, to share a story of birth.
Good morning and Shana Tova. My name is Dustin Nides, and I was asked to speak today about the topic of birth under our theme today of New Beginnings. While my wife Sarah may have been slightly better suited to cover this topic, I'm grateful to share my experience and the beautiful outcome, the birth of our daughter. So let me start off the story from a beginning many can relate to. I had a job that brought me on an airplane weekly, weekends filled with plans, and the feeling of always have to be on. Never enough hours in the day. With the uprise of the pandemic, this chapter of the story ends quickly. Travel stops, calendars empty, friends and family isolate, and not enough hours of the day quickly transforms into not enough Netflix TV shows. We all become embarrassingly familiar with the Netflix pop-up, "Are you still watching?" While timing is never perfect, around the same time we discovered that we were expecting our first child. As most first-timers, we were filled with excitement, glazed by a layer of nervousness. Having a baby already seemed like a challenge without the additional limitations due to COVID, such as watching our daughter's first ultrasound from the car, garage visits instead of a waiting room filled with guests, and missing out on those joyous hugs. The list goes on and on. Despite all these challenges and the loss of two incredible individuals, our grandmother Helen and our grandfather Ronald, the day arrived where we welcomed our beautiful, loved, and happy girl, our daughter Sophia Helen Nides, Rahel Haya in Hebrew, named after those grandparents. Instantly, we fell in love. Like today's holiday, the experience has brought an immense amount of introspection on the past year. While for many the pandemic has been described as tearing people apart, for our family, it has brought us closer together in many unanticipated ways. We navigated complicated situations together, such as our daughter in the NICU. We made tough medical decisions without family nearby, and it reminded us of those items we take for granted, such as a simple hug. Additionally, on a positive note, we were able to enjoy endless walks outside and allow Sophie to grow deep bonds with bubbies, aunts, uncles, and other family members within our COVID bubble. This experience resulted in what I would call the ultimate new beginning that parallels Rosh Hashanah, and that is exactly how I felt since the first time I laid eyes on our daughter Sophie. It marks the new beginning of our lives and will continue to shape the individual I and my wife will become. Also, like today's holiday, this experience will continue to bring sweetness into the new year through daily giggles, smiles, kisses. Wherever we go, Sophie is sharing that sweetness with others through her bright personality. We hope this coming year brings all of you the kind of joy and sweet moments we have found during an also very challenging year. Shana Tova.
Yasher Koach, Dustin and Sarah, thank you for sharing your journey with us. Continue on page 3 with Anim Zamirot.
Anim Zamirot v'shirim merog, ki elecha nafshi tarog, ki elecha, ki elecha, ki elecha nafshi tarog. Ki elecha, ki elecha, ki elecha nafshi tarog.
נפשי חמדה בצל ידיך, לדעת כל רצונך. כי לך, כי לך, כי לך, נפשי תערוד בידי
דברי בכבודך, אומר ליבי בדודך, אומר חבר, בך נכבדנו, בשמחה חבר, בשירי ידידו. כי אליך, כי אליך, כי אליך, נפשי תחת.
Turn to page 4, and we'll hear from our community member Rachel Bates on the experience of having a B'nai child with a B'nai Mitzvah this past year.
Yasher Koach. I've been asked to speak about planning my son's bar mitzvah in the midst of a pandemic. Are we being socially irresponsible? Are we being selfish? Should we be going through this when so many people are suffering? Are we contributing to the spread? These are only some of the questions my husband and I asked each other in the days and months preceding Yona's bar mitzvah, which was about a year ago today. My Talmud Torah class in 1993 had about 40 students in it. I believe we were one of the largest classes to come through the Temple of Aaron. We had bar mitzvah celebrations to attend to every weekend, and on some weekends, 2 or 3. It was a big deal. It was a really big deal. When we shopped for back-to-school clothes that year, we bought special wardrobes for Friday and Saturday services, along with outfits for the anticipated parties that followed. Fall came, and our season began. Special rules came with our attendance. We were told to arrive on time, to open our prayer books, to pay attention, to participate, to stay in our seats for the whole service. And in particular, we were told not to leave the synagogue during the Torah and Haftorah portion of the services out of respect for the bar bat mitzvah. But why? Why is it so important for us to follow those rules? Well, because practicing to become a bar bat mitzvah was the biggest challenge that any of us had ever experienced before. Aside from reading out of the Torah, which is a feat in and of itself, there were the speeches given by the bar bat mitzvah explaining their Torah portion and expressing their gratitude to their parents, rabbis, and cantors for helping them accomplish what seemed like an insurmountable task. This is one of the most important days in the lives of Jewish children around the world. It brought with it certain rituals and expectations, as it does today. The bar bat mitzvah's kippot was meticulously needle-pointed by bubbies and savtas. The talit was most likely a family heirloom being passed down from generation to generation, or one brought home from someone's most recent trip to Israel. Both will be a topic of conversation after the service with friends wanting to see how they compared to their own. Finally, at the end of service, when all was said and done and everything that had been practiced over and over again for a year in preparation was performed, everyone stood up clapping and saying, Mazel Tov, Usimi Tov. Verbal confirmation from the congregation and the peers. The bar mitzvah had accomplished that almighty goal, taken on that huge responsibility, endured the daunting ritual of becoming a man or a woman by learning to read Torah and lead the congregation in Shabbat Friday night and Saturday morning services. And then came the reward for the exhausting efforts with a celebration that included out-of-town guests, long-distance relatives, camp friends, school friends, family friends, grandparents, their siblings, parents, and all of their friends. Flash forward to 2020 and the time of COVID. It's a couple months before my son will be summoned to the pulpit, only we're not shopping for outfits. We're not waiting for RSVPs to come back from our guests because we haven't sent out any invitations. We aren't booking hotel room blocks for out-of-town guests because no one can fly here to be with us. Instead, we're waiting for our venue to let us know if we even can host a celebration with them, and if so, how many people we would be allowed to invite. We're in constant communication with the synagogue, wondering the same thing. Will we be able to have a live bar mitzvah? And if so, how many people would be allowed to invite? My immediate family, with my siblings, their spouses, and children, are 17 people. And at this time, if we're allowed to have service at the synagogue, the most we could have is 25 to 30, and that included clergy and staff. Needless to say, this is not how I pictured the process going. It's safe to say no one would given us grief for throwing in the towel. There's a pandemic. Kids had a terrible school year. They only had half a hockey season. Herzl and other Jewish overnight camps were closed. I was working from home while my husband went to work every day. We were exhausted, COVID fatigued, and we desperately need a vacation, or at least a break from the horrible. The sad reality is that our children's lives have been negatively impacted in a way that we never experienced. So not only can we not relate to them, there appeared to be nothing we could do about it. Or could we? That's when my husband and I decided, no, we weren't going to let the pandemic ruin this too. This is where we're going to turn the negative into a positive. We found out that we could have services in the synagogue, and we convinced the clergy that 40 people could socially distance comfortably in this sanctuary. This allowed for our family and a couple of close friends to come together and support Yonah on this momentous day. Similarly, our venue figured out a way to accommodate 70 of our closest friends and family. Again, we could have decided that these numbers were not good enough, that if we couldn't invite our out-of-town guests, all of our friends, and all of Yonah's friends, it wasn't worth going through this pomp and circumstance. But we didn't. We decided that we were going to do our best with what we had. Our motto became, it'll be. Not it'll be great, or it'll be awful, or it'll be not as good as this or that. It'll be. And it was what it was. This was the current situation, and we decided we were going to do our best with what we had, and so it was. And that's when the fun began. Since we couldn't go out shopping and buy new outfits for the event, I brought the shopping to us. I ordered everything I could in every size available, and we had our own little fashion show runway. We took pictures of our outfits and shoes and sent them to friends and grandparents for their review and critique. Instead of picking out a tallit in Israel, we found a store in Israel that was still able to ship to the States. Yonah and I spent hours on our tablet pouring through the different options and details, picking out his colors and where his Hebrew name would be embroidered. Masks were mandatory and oneg was not possible. So instead of hosting Saturday afternoon oneg, we ordered personalized purple masks with silver writing that said, Yonah's Bar Mitzvah, 9/11/2020, with matching purple kippot for during services and individually wrapped nothing but cakes for people to enjoy on their way out. We were supposed to have a bowling party with access to a ballroom for a DJ and dancing. That was not possible. So instead, we splurged on the homemade ice cream bar, the most amazing photo booth ever, and more balloons that I could count, including Yonah's name and ginormous silver Mylar balloons. I never imagined in my life that I'd have to ask my husband, what's our balloon budget? We hired a photographer for all day Saturday and acted like it was a wedding. We took all the pictures. We took cousin pictures, we took sibling pictures, we took grandparent pictures, we even had wardrobe changes. We took pictures with our masks on, we took pictures with our masks off. We documented what life was like for us in 2020. In the end, what we remember most is that Yonah nailed his extremely long Haftorah portion. His Uncle Josh and I were called to the Torah to read. The grandparents were able to participate in Torah service. Our non-Jewish friends got to witness this amazing ritual and gain insight into Judaism, and our family and close friends were there to support us and try not to cry while I was crying giving my speech, even though I promised myself I wouldn't, similar to today. So, were we socially responsible? Were we selfish? Did we contribute to the spread? No, none of the above. We did everything we could with the restrictions at the time and made Yonah's day fit within them. I don't regret for one moment putting on my happy face for the kids, setting my expectations of the day to the side, and getting Yonah excited for all things that we could still control. It'll be, and it was.
Thank you, Rachel. Mazel tov to Yonah and to the entire family. It was, and you were able to find the blessings even in those moments. God willing, we are as well. Page 4, Makom Bina.
God, do you want to?
חוכמה מאין תימצא, באיזה מקום בינה, איזה מקום בינה. והחוכמה מאין תימצא, באיזה מקום בינה. והחוכמה מאין תימצא, באיזה מקום בינה, איזה מקום בינה. הן יראת אדוני היא חוכמה, וסור וסור מרע בינה. הן יראת אדוני היא חוכמה, וסור וסור מרע בינה. והחוכמה מאין תימצא, באיזה מקום בינה. והחוכמה מאין תימצא, באיזה מקום בינה, איזה מקום בינה. הן יראת אדוני היא חוכמה, וסור וסור מרע בינה. הן יראת אדוני היא חוכמה, וסור וסור מרע בינה. לה לה לה
We invite up our congregant Lauren Starwall to share with us a story of conversion.
Hi, I'm Lauren, and I've been asked to speak about my conversion. It's a little bit of a abnormal story. So about 10 years ago, I met some Jews, and I started doing Jewish holidays and customs and traditions with them over time. And I thought to myself, this is awesome. These people have this book that describes their history of their relationship with God, and everyone agrees on it, and it's really spelled out how they practice, and I just thought it was super cool. So I didn't have a religious background myself, but I had a really close relationship with God. And I really believe in being in the right place at the right time, everything happening for the right reasons. So I deducted that I need to be Jewish. I'm supposed to be Jewish. I love this religion. But at that point, I only knew Orthodox Jews. So I went to an Orthodox rabbi, and I said, I want to be Jewish. And he said, great, you have to do everything that is commanded of you as a Jew, or you are not considered Jewish, and your children aren't considered Jewish, and any other sect other than us, pish posh, like, you're not going to be a Jew. So I'm like, okay, I don't really know what this means, but next thing I find I'm studying the ancient agricultural farming methods of the temple times. I'm just way deep in. So I have this fire lit under me, and I just want to learn everything, and I made this good life for myself in this Orthodox community, but I'm still questioning, like, all of these different things. I'm questioning, why am I doing what I'm told so blindly? Why am I just following these things? And when I ask my questions, I'm not getting good answers. Nothing is satisfying me. So At this point, I've had a relationship with Rabbi Aaron, or not Rabbi Aaron, Rabbi Miller at Temple of Aaron, and I called him, and he had been my springboard for like times I had been questioning these things recently, and I said, I got to get out of this. I got to get out of Orthodox, and I need a new beginning. And so he welcomes me with open arms into Temple of Aaron, and he gets me into study groups, and he gets me community again, and I had this change where like information was accessible, and I felt like there was more transparency. And so ultimately I ended up converting this year to conservative Judaism, and this is my first Rosh Hashanah as a Jew. So my conversion reminds me of this Talmud story of these two great Torah scholars named Hillel and Shammai, and the story goes that this man wants to convert to Judaism. So he comes to Shammai and he says, teach me the entire Torah as I hop on one leg. And Shammai is insulted that this man thinks that this is possible, and he sends him away. And so this guy doesn't give up. He goes to Hillel and he says, teach me the entire Torah as I hop on one leg. And Hillel takes on the challenge, and Hillel says, what is hateful to you, do not do to your neighbor. That is the entire Torah. The rest is commentary. Go study. And the two distinctions between their answer, really being that guy hopping on one leg, trying to learn everything. And so in this last year, I've had a real new beginning, and I think that taking that step away from by defining my faith by how many commandments do I keep, how often do I pray, how good of a Jew am I being, it's changed. I've now realized that I define my faith by the lessons that I learned from the Torah and how I apply that to my life, and the traditions that I keep. And like ultimately I define my faith and my Judaism by my fear and awe of God. And this Rosh Hashanah is about, and every Rosh Hashanah is about new beginnings, and it's about self-reflection. So as my first Rosh Hashanah as a Jew, I couldn't think of a better way for me to start by analyzing the story of my conversion. And so I just want to thank you all for letting me share it, and Shana Tova.
Lauren, we are so happy to be celebrating your first Rosh Hashanah with you. Your story is the living embodiment of the aphorism that we all believe you are always welcome at Temple of Aaron, and we're so happy that you found your home here. Va'ani Ashir on page 5.
Good idea.
השיר עוזך, ואענה לבוקר חסדך, כי היית משגב לי ומנוס ביום צר לי. ואני אשיר עוזך, ואענה לבוקר חסדך, היית משגב לי ומנוס ביום צר לי. ואני אשיר עוזך, ואענה לבוקר חסדך, כי היית משגב לי ומנוס ביום צר לי. ואני אשיר עוזך, ואענה לבוקר חסדך, כי היית משגב לי ומנוס ביום צר לי. עוזי אליך אזמרה, וארנן לבוקר חסדך, כי היית משגב לי ומנוס ביום צר לי. ואני אשיר עוזך, וארנן לבוקר חסדך, כי היית משגב לי ומנוס ביום צר לי. עוזי אליך אזמרה, אזמרה. עוזי אליך אזמרה, אזמרה. עוזי אליך
We invite up our community member, Wendy Kane, to share with us the story of a loss this past year.
How often do we look at a string of bad things happening to us and think, it must be a curse? I'm sure we have all felt the world was cursed at the impact of the COVID virus stopped what we considered to be a normal life. Now add to that the death of a loved one. My mother passed away during COVID, but not due to COVID. Was that a curse? How about going through planning the funeral and a sort of Shiva, if you will, when COVID protocols prevented family and friends from physically being able to offer comfort? We were only allowed gatherings of 10, and that could only be outside. Not very practical in December. Was that a curse? The funeral was held on Zoom, as we had all gotten used to using. Although the family was allowed to be graveside, but only the family. No clergy, no extended family, just the 6 of us. And because we were graveside, we didn't have the technology to actually be part of the Zoom. We felt alone, without any clergy by our sides to comfort the mourners. Was that a curse? The traditional after-funeral meal of hard-boiled eggs, kugel, bagels, lox, fruit, sweets, prepared by friends and family, could not take place. And the Shiva service was again on Zoom as the only option. And one of the most awkward things about Zoom is trying to determine who will speak next. When you're in person, you get visual clues. On the screen, it's much harder to discern. Was that a curse? So far, I've painted a pretty bleak picture. Death in any time frame is a difficult and dark time. COVID became, and continues to be, an emotional roller coaster. The two events together, in my mind, could easily be considered a curse. But I am not the type of person that can only focus on the negative or curse side of life. My Judaism and strong faith help me look for the antidote. And it just happens to be in one of the most beautiful melodies we sing every Shabbat. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov. How goodly are thy tents, O Jacob. You see, in Parshat Balak, Bilam was sent to put a curse on the Israelites. But what came out of his mouth was more of a blessing. He basically was in awe of what he saw, a community, living in tents as individuals, maybe family units, but living together in a society. So how does that translate to my blessings? First of all, the fact that my mom did not have COVID was a blessing. She was 92, in poor health, no quality of life for the past year and a half, and was finally at peace, and it is what she wanted. As for the funeral in December, we were blessed to have a December day with no snow on the ground and sunshine with mild temperatures. In Minnesota, that's a true blessing. And having the funeral on Zoom, that allowed close friends and family friends from Winnipeg to California to other states to be with us when they normally would not have been able to make arrangements to come in. That truly was a blessing. And the Shiva meal, while I hate to say that I missed eating what I consider Jewish comfort food, I mean, who doesn't like kugel? We were blessed not to have to struggle making accommodations for several dietary allergies within the family. People mean well, and food is seen as one of the best ways to care for others. But let's be honest, not everybody has good cooking skills in their repertoire. Another blessing. While it is not always easy, it is almost always possible to find a blessing or two among the curses. And no one ever said we have to do it alone. As we enter 5782, may all work together to find the blessings among the curses. Shana Tova Umituka.
Thank you, Wendy. Your mother's memory is truly a blessing in those incredible words of Torah that you shared with each of us today. Thank you. We'll continue with Ruach Nediva on page 6.
אל תשליכני מלפניך, אל תשליכני מלפניך, אל תשליכני מלפניך, ברוח קודשך אל תיקח ממני. אל תשליכני מלפניך, אל תשליכני מלפניך, אל תשליכני מלפניך, ברוח קודשך אל תיקח ממני.
השיבה לי ששון אישך ורוח נדיבה תשמחני. השיבה לי ששון אישך ורוח נדיבה תשמחני. השיבה לי ששון אישך ורוח נדיבה תשמחני. השיבה לי ששון אישך ורוח נדיבה תשמחני.
תשליכני מלפניך, אל תשליכני מלפניך, אל תשליכני מלפניך, ברוח קודשך אל תיקח ממני.
השיבה לי,
השיבה לי,
ששון אישך,
ששון אישך,
ורוח
נדיבה תשמחני. השיבה לי, ששון אישך,
ורוח נדיבה תשמחני. השיבה לי,
השיבה לי,
ששון אישך,
ששון אישך,
ורוח נדיבה
תשמחני. השיבה לי,
ששון אישך, ורוח נדיבה תשמחני, ורוח נדיבה
Call up our final speaker, community member Molly Sorensen, to share her story of COVID and recovery.
For those of you who don't know me well, my name is Molly Sorensen. My husband is Brent. We've been married for 17 years. We have 3 children, Shay, who's 14. Yes, we also had a COVID bar mitzvah. Owen is 11, and Madeline is 8. My husband is a dentist, and I'm a physical therapist. I've been working for the past 12 years with a geriatric population in a transitional care unit, long-term care facility, essentially a nursing home setting. When COVID started to mount in March of 2020, long-term care facilities were hit particularly hard. The elderly with multiple predisposing conditions were particularly susceptible to the virus and suffered both mentally from isolation as well as medical complications. The facility where I worked started to see cases at the end of April. Unfortunately, like everywhere at that time, our supply of proper PPE was very limited. Due to the highly infectious nature of COVID and my position as a lead physical therapist in charge, I chose to treat our COVID patients almost exclusively in order to limit my coworkers' exposure to the virus and protect our non-COVID patient population. I felt it was my obligation and responsibility, and I was confident I knew how to properly follow the necessary precautions. To give you an idea of what that looked like, I brought a change of clothes to work each day after being in the COVID unit. I would shower at work, change my clothes, bring my COVID clothes home, leave my shoes in the garage, and wash my clothes every night. This was my daily routine. My husband and I spoke on multiple occasions how we knew it was only a matter of time before one of us would test positive for COVID, given both of us work in high-risk jobs. Quite honestly, being a dentist, I thought it was more likely to be him. Like many, we both assumed we were young and healthy and would unlikely become critically ill. In November, there was a large uptick in COVID cases, and I continued to work our COVID unit daily. I started not feeling well on November 17th. I was tested 3 times that week for COVID. Although symptomatic, all tests came back negative. I continued to quarantine myself at home, still not feeling well. On the night of November 23rd, everything changed. I began having more difficult time breathing to the point where I felt I needed further medical attention. After convincing me to go to the emergency room instead of urgent care, my husband dropped me at St. John's Hospital in Maplewood, where I said goodbye and would update him as soon as I knew something. From there, things progressed downhill rapidly. I had a chest scan that showed what appeared to be COVID pneumonia in both lungs, and as a consequence, very low oxygen saturations. Unfortunately, in situations like this, having background medical knowledge can be a curse, as I knew my condition was extremely serious. I was admitted to the hospital and called my husband to tell him I had given the hospital permission to intubate me if necessary, and that I loved him and my kids. That was the last time we spoke for about 2 weeks, as I was intubated about 24 hours later. While intubated, things were very touch and go, as they had a difficult time stabilizing me. On November 25th, I was transferred via ambulance to the University of Minnesota, as St. John's did not feel they were able to provide me with the medical care that I may need. Fortunately, the University of Minnesota was able to provide continued care, which allowed me to heal. They were eventually able to extubate me on December 4th after a failed attempt on December 3rd. It required that I stay heavily sedated through December 7th, which is when my memories started to return, and I was able to communicate via FaceTime with family. For those of you who know me, you won't be surprised that the first thing I asked for when I woke up was my work computer. From there, I remained in the ICU for several days. I transitioned within the hospital a few times, participating in physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, daily, and working very hard to get my brain and body functioning. I will never forget what it felt like to be unable to walk, raise my arms up, shower, dial a phone, feed myself, all things I took for granted prior to COVID, and things I have helped my patients with countless times over the years. My brain was scrambled, and I missed my husband, my kids, and my family more than anything. Yet, I knew I couldn't go home until I could at least walk and get up my stairs. On December 12th, I was sent to acute rehab. At this time, I was walking with a walker and doing my own physical therapy daily. The physician that spoke with my husband said I would be in acute rehab about 4 to 6 weeks. I spoke with my husband shortly after that time and said I'd be home in a week. On December 16th, after 4 days in acute rehab, I was sent home. From December 16th until February 25th, I did physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, 2 to 3 times a week, getting rides from my mom until I was well enough to drive. I continued to do my own rehabilitation every day at home to be able to return to work. To say I worked hard to get to that point is truly an understatement. I had multiple post-recovery medical complications as a result of COVID: a rapid heartbeat, diabetes, blood clots. By the time I returned to work, all those medical complications had mostly resolved, and I was able to resume a more normal life. I am happy to report that I have no long hauler symptoms whatsoever and very few residual effects of COVID. I am forever grateful for the wonderful medical care I received throughout my battle with COVID and the treatment's tremendous professionalism and dedication of all those who cared for me despite personal risk to themselves. They are my heroes, as they have saved my life. COVID has changed me in many ways. I have become a healthier version of myself, making it a point to exercise regularly and eat better. It has also put life more into perspective. Although I remain dedicated to my work, the importance of my family is paramount. I work very hard to do my 8 hours of work and come home to my family and not come home to work more. I have always appreciated my close-knit family and friends, but it is so much more than that now. They played such an integral part of my recovery, from their help in setting up a meal train for us, doing daily medical updates so everyone knew what was happening, to making my daughter feel special on her 8th birthday with a drive-by celebration and extra gifts because I couldn't be there. And yes, even playing homeschool teacher to my kids. The list goes on and on. So on this Rosh Hashanah, I ask that you take a look at who and what is important to you and make it and them a priority this upcoming year. There are so many opportunities that should unite us, but are instead pushing us apart. Find common ground and build from there, as you never know what, what the future will look like. Make the important things the important things. I wish you all a happy and healthy new year. Shana Tova.
Thank you, Molly, for sharing your story with us and that vital lesson for us all. I have to say, after this past 18 months apart, to be immersed in the stories of our community has been exactly what I've needed this Rosh Hashanah, and I hope it was what you needed as well. Conclude with the song We Rise on page 7.
In hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're right here. In hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're right here. We rise, 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 humbly hearted, rise, rise, rise.
We won't be divided.
Rise, 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 with Spirit to guide us. Rise, rise, rise. In hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer,
we're right here. In hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're right here.
we rise, rise. All of the children
Rise, elders with wisdom.
rise,
Ancestors surround us.
rise. In hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer,
we're right here. In hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're right here.
we rise up from the wreckage.
Rise with tears and with courage.
Rise,
Fighting for love.
rise, 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 yeah.
In hope,
In prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer,
we're right here. In hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're right here.
we rise, humbly hearted.
Rise, we won't be divided.
Rise, with Spirit to guide us. Rise, in hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope,
in prayer, we're right here.
in hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're right here.
Amen. I invite you to rise on page 12 for a final blast of the shofar. If my shofar player can come. Take a breath. Praised are you, Lord, our God, ruler of the universe, who taught us the way of holiness through mitzvot and has commanded us to hear the sounds of the shofar. Praised are you, Lord, our God, ruler of the universe, who has kept us in life, sustained us, and enabled us to reach this season. Tekiah. Shvarim Trua. Tekiah. Tekiah. Shvarim Trua. Tekiah, Tekiah, Shvarim Trua, Tekiah, Tekiah, Shvarim, Tekiah, Tekiah, Shvarim, Tekiah, Tekiah, Shvarim, Tekiah, Tekiah, Trua, Tekiah, Tekiah, Trua, Tekiah, Tekiah, Trua, Tekiah Gedolah.
הרשת שפתנו ירב לפניך, הרם ונישא. מבין ומאזין, מביט ומקשיב לכל תקייתנו. ותקבל ברחמים וברצון, סדר מחויותינו. תקבל ברחמים וברצון, סדר מחויותינו. היום מרת עולם, היום במשפט כל דרי עולמים, עם גואלים מכבדים, עם גואלים מרחמנו, גרחם הלבנים, עם גואלים אין לך צלויות, אתה שכננו ותוציא כאור משפטנו, היום קדוש.
We turn to page 14 for B'Sefer Chaim. We turn to page 14 for Hayom Ta'amseinu.
Hi, diggy da, diggy da, die, and I diggy die. Hi, diggy da, diggy da, die, and I diggy die. Hi, diggy da, diggy da, die, and I diggy die. Hi, diggy da, diggy da, die, and I diggy die. Diggy da, diggy da, and I diggy die. Hi, diggy da, and I diggy die. Hi, diggy da, and I diggy die. Hayom, 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 te'amseinu.
Amen.
Hayom, 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 te'barcheinu.
Amen.
Hayom, 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 tegadleinu. Hayom, 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 tidrashenu letova. Hi, diggy die, diggy die, die, ella diggy die. Hi, diggy die, diggy die, die, ella diggy die. Hi, diggy die, diggy die, die, ella diggy die. Hi, diggy die, diggy die, die, ella diggy die. Diggy die, la la, diggy die, ella die, la la la, diggy die. Hi, la la, diggy die, ella die, la la la. Hi, die, diggy die, ella die, la la la, diggy die. Hi, la la, diggy die, ella die, la la la. Hayom, 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 tiftevenu lechaim tovim. Amen. Hayom, 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 tishma shavatenu. Hayom, 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 היום היום תקבל ברחמים וברצון את תפילתנו, אמן. היי דיגידי דיגידי די, אללה דיגידי, 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 ידידי אללה דיגידי, ידידי אללה דיגידי, היי אללה דיגידי, ידידי אללה דיגידי, היי אללה דיגידי, ידידי אללה דיגידי, היום 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 תטבחנו במינים צדקך, amen.
Amen. We remain standing for Mourners Kaddish on page 15. And in solemn testimony unto that unbroken faith which links the generations one to another, we call to mind those whose yortzites occur on the 2nd of Tishrei, which began last night and continues today. Sarah Aaron, Marvin Buchan, David Frischberg, Abraham Gottfried, Isaac Gozansky, Yordis Hirschhorn, Jack Kafetz, Mary Kirschner, Leo Krasner, Abraham Schneider, Helen Schwartz, Ida Sokol, Esther Tucker, Theodore Wolf, and Natalie Saxon. We also call to mind those whose yortzites occur on the 3rd of Tishrei, which begins tonight. Mary Aaron, Morris Axelrod, Mary Bloomberg, Dr. Abraham Greenberg, John Lewis, Patricia Rogovan, Herman Schleif, Lucille Schneider, Morris Traeger, Ethel Ann Weinberg, Libby Weitzman, and Sarah Woloshin. We also remember those in our community who have passed in the last 30 days and for whom we mourn. Mildred Jacobson, Arlene H. Gralnick, Donald Kvasnik, Michael Powers, Julian Applebaum, Dorothy Schneider, Artis Blumenthal, Doug Ginsberg, and Sylvia Hoffinger. May all their memories be a blessing. We turn to page 15 for Mourners Kaddish. Yit Gadal ve'yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah V'alma divrach hirutei v'amlich malchutei B'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael Ba'agala uv'izman kari v'imru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah mevorach leolam ulomei maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei dekudsha b'richu le'ela le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata tush bechata v'nechamata damiran be'alma v'imru Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya V'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. May all their memories be a blessing. We remain standing and can turn to face the back of the room where our flags stand for God Bless America and Hatikva.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
Tova, everyone. Thank you for being here with us. Thank you so much for those who donated our second day service booklets in memory of S. Paul Johnson, Tony Braverman, Max and Clara Rikus, and Louis H. and Rivian Johnson. The David A. Berg family created an endowment that provide apples and honey on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, and David and Paula, Adam and Samuel Schraber established an endowment for High Holy Day Torah reading in honor of the 62nd wedding anniversary of David's parents, Rose and Harry Schraber of blessed memory. Thank you so much to all of our second day speakers and to all who helped organize honors. Shana Tova, everyone. Don't forget to take a bag to fill with goodies for our Take a Bite Out of Hunger food drive. Shana Tova, everyone.